Hello and welcome to citrixconverge. My name is Sasa Petrovic, Solution Strategist at Citrix. I have today with me Chris Twiest, Technology Officer at RawWorks, and we are going to present the future of digital workspaces is in automation. So what is this session about? We had direct engagement with IT leaders across our large strategic accounts. We had interactions with many different levels, and we are going to provide you an overview of the state of automation at our customers. We try to have a larger point of view, so we engaged with customers across different verticals, and we really try to get feedback in relation to IT operation, user experience or line of business, and culture. What this session is not about, we are not going to talk about market trends. So because we had direct engagements with the customers, the content that you see or the data that you see might not be in coherence with market trends. Additionally, it is also not a technical deep dive. We are going to focus on business implications. So just to set the scene, we are going to provide you an overview of the changes we are seeing at the customers. And when talking about changes, we are always talking about also the external forces. So at the left-hand side, we have people. So in the meantime, at our customers, they stopped actually to have a strict border between internal and external employees or internal and external users. They are actually trying to introduce more and more conditional access. We have more and more devices at the user end, and also apparently due to the pandemic, locations have changed as well. We are working from anywhere in the meantime. At the right-hand side, we have a hybrid state. All of our customers are using on-prem data centers. Cloud is already trending since 5 years and is going to trend even more. But it's also interesting to see that we see more and more software as a service or web applications and also edge services. This means that these two external factors will also have an implication to how we work and how we have actually to create the infrastructure in order to provide a digital workspace. We have, in the meantime, we are distinguishing between traditional portfolio and also modern applications or solutions. So when we look at the modern, and also because we had this change at the left-hand side and the right-hand side, we need to provide more capabilities, additional or different capabilities. In the meantime, it's important to have analytics solutions, that you have more capabilities from the automation perspectives. More and more customers are using assistants and bots, and therefore we also need to provide more APIs and also tools. Among others, microapps is one of the tools that can simplify workflows or the way how you are consuming applications. And when we look at the human or the user itself, the ecosystem around the user is also changing. We have different behavior, different work styles since the pandemic, but also the user has now, or the employee has now more tools, more data, and at that point, the user might be a little bit overwhelmed. We see in the meantime that the human in general is a little bit the bottleneck in this operational world. What came out across all the conversations with our customers and IT leaders is everyone has to decrease budget, less resources, less time. On the other hand, everyone is expecting more outcomes. Higher productivity is expected, better scalability, and also higher quality. These two items are actually in conflict to each other. Probably one of the reasons how, or probably the only way how to solve this is to introduce automation. As I said before, we spoke with IT leaders across our accounts and we segmented the feedback into 3 different areas. One point was IT operation, we have user experience, also line of business and culture as aspects. I'm actually quite glad that almost every IT leader spoke about culture as well, because it has a huge implication to the entire transformation. All of these areas are also overlapping to each other, so they have dependencies to each other. Now, when we look at the feedback, we have structured actually all the feedback into 3 different items. Current mode of operation, that's the current state, challenges, so the pain points they have today, and also the future or the aimed future mode of operation. When I look at IT operation today, automation is used quite tactically. It is actually more or less used for all the lifecycle management processes like infrastructure maintenance, rolling out applications, rolling out hotfixes. We have also image and release management. Reporting is also used quite often to get an understanding of the capacity. And in the meantime, as many companies are transitioning to cloud migration automation is also seen quite often. However, automation is not commodity yet. Every time a customer has to reinvent the wheel. So we have a lot of homegrown automation capabilities and processes. What we also have seen is that it is very often related to high efforts. I have a customer example where the customer is actually since 2 years trying to establish or introduce automation on the data center level. And at that point, I'm asking myself, how and at what point or when are they going to realize the costs or actually the investment back? So what we also see is actually limited scalability and capabilities on premises. As I said before, a lot of homegrown applications, homegrown automation, and they are also relying or they have also dependencies to the hardware assets and supply chain. Therefore, sometimes the organizations cannot react immediately on a request. How to master these challenges? What we see quite often is that the organizations are moving to cloud native solutions to get rid of these resource bottlenecks. But more and more often, we also see a multi-hybrid cloud ecosystem. And at that point, we need to ensure that the resources can also transition from one point to the other point, that also the resources can talk to each other. And here we can see that automation is quite helpful in this migration efforts. Low code, no code is also often used in order to simplify the integration of automation. And as I said before, we have already lifecycle management, but the next step or the next level is to predict the capacity management in more detail. And in that regards, we see often organizations using analytics capabilities. When we look at the user experience and line of business feedback, what was quite interesting for us is that organizations are using automation quite often with user self-service, onboarding, offboarding users, so creating Active Directory accounts, ensuring that they have the right resources, right applications, access to the right resources. So this is a quite cumbersome process. And at the front end, it looks like that everything is automated. But we also received quite often the feedback that it is actually a hybrid scenario. Often also in the background, they have to do still manual steps in order to finish the onboarding process. So what we discovered at that point is actually that there are almost no user experience or line of business automation in place. It might be also that IT doesn't have the visibility or the awareness of what the line of business is doing in this regard. And therefore, we have also seen that there is a disconnect between IT and line of business. Another point which was apparent to us is when it comes to testing of applications, the test flow is not automated or quite often not automated yet. This also means that there needs to be a collaboration between IT and line of business. If that's not the case, sometimes a rollout can be a cumbersome process, can have mistakes or failures within an image or a release, and that also causes afterwards troubleshooting efforts. So this is an area where companies would like to invest more. And here we see that they want to transition to web applications, not only to reduce also the maintenance and the infrastructure costs, but also to consume more APIs, more capabilities to automate actually the application. They want to get rid of the traditional or legacy applications. In that sense, simplification of application is something which is very, very important at the customers. They want actually to automate even workflows. What was actually called out or mentioned in our conversations was micro apps from Citrix and power apps from Microsoft. Here again, we have low code and no code builder, so it is expected that the line of business does automation to some certain degree isolated from the IT.
Yeah, we talked about this, of course. I had experienced the same at customers that the line of business was already creating power apps, and IT had no idea that they had power apps, and IT was busy creating micro apps. And line of business was creating power apps, and then it's not focusing on the end user. Of course, you were at user experience, and the user experience is best when those things come together. So it's good to check what this line of business doing, how can we integrate, because there are now capabilities. This is a quick technical thing, but there is now an embedded page option within micro apps, and that allows you to embed a Power App as a micro app. So giving your users really good end user experience, but the disconnect is still there. So IT is not talking to the line of business. Line of business is not showing, okay, we are building this Power BI dashboards, Power Apps, which can integrate in micro apps.
I absolutely agree with you here, Chris. And the other thing is actually that the IT cannot scale, right? If line of business is expecting to use more and more automation, they cannot build actually the automation framework for all the different line of business departments. So I always say that IT has actually to create the infrastructure to maintain actually the facilities, but at the end it is expected that line of business also takes over some responsibilities in this regard. Still, they have to be connected. It has to be actually in alignment to each other, but there is actually on both ways changes, or we need to have actually at both elements changes.
Yeah, that's correct. If you look, it's not so strange that the line of business is building Power BI and Power Apps with data of the company. That is not something that IT is used to do, to build a line of business thing, dashboard or whatever. So it's not crazy that there is a disconnect, but it's important to, for the user experience, it's important to connect those two. That's important.
Agree, absolutely agree. So when it comes to culture, what we have seen is that the project is done in linear approaches or in linear methods. And there is nothing wrong about linear methods. The only thing that I have seen is that almost every project is done in large chunks. So at that point, you have many dependencies. And when you have dependencies, it can happen that one single stream can cause a delay to the entire project. So when we look at the cultural challenges that we have today is, as I mentioned before, we have all over resource bottlenecks and also knowledge and skills gaps. This means that to some degree, even the IT operational teams do not have automation skills. And that causes actually an issue because automation is requested almost everywhere, but the company cannot actually provide the necessary requirements or the necessary skills to the line of business or internal operation activities. What we also see is that there is an expectation of the change management process. So they want to increase the speed or the pace in general. However, the change management process is clearly defined and doesn't allow actually to increase the pace. So this is another conflict that we have seen. In order to transition, we also have to unlearn old habits. And that's also something that we see in all the cloud conversations and automation conversations at all the customers, right? So we are doing IT in a manner since 10, 15, 20 years. And it's difficult to get away or to remove actually the old habits. This is also something which needs to change. Often similar to line of business to IT, we have even in the IT world, in the IT operational world, a siloed approach with many different overlaps. So how to address these challenges? We see a lot of investment related to training and education. Companies or organizations are trying to establish DevOps models. This means that development and the operational departments have to come closer. By the way, when I was a senior consultant in Citrix, that was probably one of the findings we have seen at all the different customers. So we have development, we have operations, and these two departments do not talk quite frequently to each other. So the operational departments have to consume probably not finished or not very well-defined solutions. And this again causes frictions. As I mentioned before, we have siloed approach. We believe that also based on the customer conversations that we will have more and more consolidation. And quite interesting aspect was automation as a service because knowledge and skills are not in place. We have one single customer. They told us actually they have established a single department and they are taking care for automation inside the organization. Another very important point is agile frameworks. As I said before, today we see quite often a linear approach, but to be more flexible, to react on unforeseen events better, we believe that also agile frameworks are going to grow. So we have defined 3 key takeaways. The first one is for IT operation. Leverage turnkey cloud-hosted AI solutions to decrease the complexity. And it's important, I'm not talking about automation anymore. Here I'm talking already about artificial intelligence. We believe that we need to make a bigger leap. We need to drive automation with data insights. And therefore, our advice is here, establish an AI-first culture. The second point about user experience is invest in line of business automation solutions. This is in my eyes one big trend. So this means that in order to get a higher employee productivity, your entire workforce needs to be able actually to use better or more advanced technologies. Our advice here though is start small, don't go big. Start to explore automation capabilities and try to start small with similar or small use cases and then expand the use cases once they are established. And the last point is about culture. We believe that we need to have a fluid IT and line of business operation in order to drive automation and employee efficiency across the entire organization. And for us, our advice is here, IT is also at the edge of the technology. They have already, they had touch points with agile frameworks, also with DevOps. So in our eyes, IT needs to lead this transition. So this is it from my side. I'm handing over now to Chris. Chris, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to talk about a few use cases of the microapps in which I'm going to look at, in which we did something for the line of business with the microapp. In the examples I'm going to show you are still IT-driven processes. So they are still processes that are heavy for IT and not yet the line of business. So that is something that we at RawWorks are also working on at the moment with our customers to do more with line of business applications automation. But for now, I can share you some business cases that are a little bit more IT driven. So the first business case we did was the onboarding system. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to talk about the one slide back. Can you cut this? Let me. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, let me write this down so that I can ask that they cut this. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this workflow. So I will just say next slide.
Okay, perfect.
Easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first business case we worked. So the first business case I want to talk about is the onboarding of an employee. And I think that every automation project should start with business consulting, talking to the customer, getting the feel of what is happening within the process and where can we accelerate that process with automation. So what you see to the right is a simple workflow I created together with the customer. I did interviews with them. I did interviews with HR. I did interviews with IT members on how a new user is onboarded within the organization. So this is the workflow that I used. And so I first made that on paper. And then I looked, okay, which components can be automated. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that we have created microapps, which allows them to create a new user, to view whose accounts are expired, can see the end dates of accounts that are coming up, and they can view all the users that they created. So it took the IT service desk 1.5 or a half hour to an hour to create a new user in the Active Directory, put the correct rights, follow that onboarding process. And they had to do that 6 times a week. So that is 3 to 6 hours every week. Well, our solution, by automating that workflow, now they only need to fill in this form, and everything is set correctly for the user that's coming to employment. So he got the correct rights, the correct application access, all that kind of stuff. It's done all by the automation process. And now it takes them like 30 minutes a week. So they went from 3 to 6 hours a week to 30 minutes a week. So that is a minimum saving of 2.5 hours. So that is 16 work days a year they got back by doing this automated. So this was an organization that manually went into Active Directory, created these users, followed the process, added the security groups of the application. We automated that, and it saves just time. Another business case on the next slide we did was the ITSM business case. So this customer had an issue that a lot of people were calling the service desk instead of using their self-service portal to just create a ticket. And the thing is, they had a pretty good self-service portal for their ITSM, but it required like 4 clicks to get there. First, you have to click on the application, then it has to start, then you need to click on self-service desk, and then you need to click on IT, and then you need to click on create a ticket. And we removed all those clicks by making it a micro app. And the micro app is now 1 click, create a new IT ticket, and there you go. By lowering this bar with 3 clicks, it had a huge impact in the business. So there were phone calls was way down, so it was a third less phone calls and more done with services. And even because we lowered the bar, they got 30% more tickets overall. So people who were not happy or had an issue with the system and created the ticket, there were people who just didn't create a ticket anymore. They were like, oh man, I need to click 4 things. I'm not gonna tell them. And they are now again doing it again. So they are getting that information sooner to the service desk. And it's really important for the user experience and and for the service desk that they know what's happening so they can fix it. So this is also a really good business case showing when the automation here is that we remove 4 clicks, right? That's the only automation we did. We removed 4 clicks, we made it directly in their workspace, and it had a huge impact. So the service desk gets more information, and they are spending less time on the phone, which means they're spending more time on fixing the issue. And I think that those were the business cases I'm sharing here. Thank you, Sasha, for the opportunity to tell about these business cases.
Thank you, Chris. I have just one last question for you. So we also spoke in preparation of this session about future use cases. Maybe can you give the audience a short overview of what are the next projects for you?
Yeah, so the next projects for us are really trying to automate the business line applications. So we are now working together with the customer, and they are shifting their complete application landscape. So they are moving away from one application vendor to another one, and the new application vendor has an API available. So we are looking together with that customer on how can we create automation for application workflows. And one cool thing is we want to do that when they go live with a new vendor, we want to have those micro apps in place as well. And so that means that for certain tasks, some end users won't have to get used to the new interface of the new application, but they have those certain tasks in the interface that they now know in Citrix, in the workspace. So that is really cool that we're gonna go live together with the implementation of those new applications.
That sounds very interesting and is also in alignment to what we have seen also from our customer interviews. So thank you again, Chris. Thanks for attending our session. Wish you a nice day. Bye all.
Bye.